Hi, I'm Bill with Besttop. Today we're going to be doing the install video on the Trektop for Bronco. We're going to be doing this on the four-door vehicle, so let's get started. So when you get your Trektop for Bronco, it's going to come in two different boxes. One's going to be labeled hardware, one's going to be labeled soft goods. We're going to put the soft goods box off to the side for right now, and we're going to focus on the hard goods box. So within the hard goods box has everything that you see here. So we're going to walk through these individual components just to help familiarize ourselves with them before we do the install. Okay, so starting on this side of the table, you have your rear door rails, you have your front door rails, you have the vertical window retainers, you have the upper window retainers, you have the belt rail retainers, you have the 1.5 link, main control link, rear halo drop bracket, rear halo mounting bracket, your main pivot brackets, your 1.5 bow, 2 bow, 3 bow, vertical window retainer seals, your 1 bow seals, belt seal, you have your left hand and right hand front side rails, tailgate bar, right and left hand tailgate bar retainers, associated hardware. There are a few additional spacers and bolts that are in this kit that will only be utilized if you have a soft top only vehicle. When we get to that step later in the video, we will show you how to utilize those if necessary. All right, and the tools that we're going to need for this install are a 5mm Allen, T25, T30, and T50 Torx drivers, the ratchet to go with, a pair of scissors, soft cloth, and a 50-50 alcohol water mix. Okay, so now that we've gone through the hard goods box and put that off to the side, looking at the soft goods box, this is what you're going to get in the kit. You're going to get your closeout film top deck that does have the 1 bow and the rear halo already installed. You have your rear window, and you have your 2 quarter windows, one for the left hand, one for the right hand side. With that being said, let's move to the vehicle. Okay guys, so the first thing in prepping the vehicle to get ready to put the soft top on is we have to remove the hard top, which obviously we have done here. The one thing you will want to note is there's 4 bolts per side that go into the belt rail. These are going to need to be retained. We're going to use them in later steps when we go to install and finish prepping the vehicle for the top. One thing to keep in mind is if you had a factory soft top or factory dual top, there is going to be a bracket right here that is going to have to be removed to make room for the new Trektop. So to do that, there's 2 bolts on top that are both T50. So taking your T50 Torx, we're going to remove those, and then we're going to keep that bracket off to the side. It will not be reused for this assembly, but we will want to maintain it in case you put the factory soft top on later. Okay, so the first step is to prep the body. We're going to do that by cleaning it. We're going to clean from the top here down, paying special attention all the way down to the belt seam. Now that this side's done, we're going to go ahead and repeat it on the other side. Okay, so now that we have the body clean, we're going to put on our closeout films. There's going to be 2 per side, and the cutout does follow the body itself. So to start, we want to find the front, which looks like this. And we're going to lay it on top using these cutouts to locate off of these 2 bolts in the body. So now that we have this in place and we're maintaining our orientation using these 2 bolts, we're going to use the split back, fold it over, and slowly roll it out. Once we have that in place, we're going to smooth this out, and then you're going to flip it and pull it rearward as well. Once again, flattening this out as we go. So with the front film in place, we're now going to do the rear. Basically, it's the same procedure. You're going to line up the bolt. There is not a second one, so we're going to follow this body line, holding it in place. And then once again, we're going to break the backing, push this film out, stick it in place. Break the back, roll it into position. With that side done, I'm going to break the seam the other way. That backing off, and roll it down into position. Okay, now that we're done, we're going to repeat on the other side. With the closeout film in place, the next step is going to be putting the belt seal on there. So to do that, it does have a PSA back, so an adhesive back. You're just going to pull this off, exposing the adhesive, and we're going to place it right along this channel, starting at the front where it's in line with the metal. As we bring it around to the rear, when we get here, we're going to cut the excess off with a pair of scissors. And then when we get to this point, we're going to just take a pair of scissors and we're going to follow the line, the cut line of the metal. And now we're going to repeat on the other side. The next step is going to be installing the vertical window retainers. These go right here at the C-pillar. To do so, we need a T30. We're going to take out these 3 bolts from the factory. We are going to retain these just in case you want to go back to a stock top. However, when we do install the new piece, there's an M6 by 30 included in the kit, 3 per side. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Once again, we'll retain these bolts for later. However, for installing the new piece, we'll be using the included hardware. Just going to line the panel up. Get all the fasteners started by hand, and then we'll come back and tighten it up once again with that T30. Now with this side complete, we're going to repeat on the other side. With the vertical window retainers in place, we're going to install the foam that goes with it. There's a point right here where the 2 come together, helps you align that. That aligns with this surface right here. So we're going to pull the backing off, and then it'll be placed right here. And repeat on the other side. For the next step, we're going to be installing our corner retainers and our tailgate bar retainers. To do that, we're going to come around to the back. If you have a soft top or dual top factory option, we are going to have to remove these clips. You're going to take that and the associated hardware, we're going to keep it in a safe place if you want to go back to your factory soft top. And then in its place, we're going to be using an M6 by 30. With that removed, we're going to take our tailgate bar retainer, lays on top of the vehicle. This comes down, and once again that M6 by 30 is going to go right in here. We're going to get it finger tight to start, and then you'll have to change to a T30 Torx to torque this one down. Once that's complete, we're going to repeat on the other side. So to finish the install on these, we're going to go back to the hardware that came with the hard top. And we're just going to start these two here, finger tight. Once again, this is just going to help us hold the position at this time. And then once we finish the install of the rest of the belt rail system, we'll be able to come back and snug everything up. Now we're going to repeat on the other side. The next step is to install our belt rails. We're going to lay this on top. We're going to reuse two of the hard top fasteners once again. And then there's going to be an M6 by 15 that marries the belt rail to the corner. So we're going to place this here. We're going to get these started finger tight once again, just to make sure that we can get everything together. Okay, with everything loosely in place, we're now going to start tightening down both the belt rail and then the tailgate bar retainer. Things to keep in mind when you're doing that: we want the back edge of the retainer to match up with the belt rail. And then at the front, the top edge of our retainer here has to line up with the door rail. So putting that together really gives you that nice transition between the two when we put the quarter windows in later. To do this, we're going to use the T50 on the carryover hardware from the hardtop, and then a T30 on our M6 by 15. Now we'll repeat on the other side. Now that we got the back half done, we're going to move up front and start putting in our door rails. To do that, we're going to install the front door rail first, then we're going to move to the rear. So like I said, starting at the front, we're going to be removing two of the factory bolts, both with T50s, right here, and then up front. So to do that, you just take the T50, we're going to pull these out. There is a difference in length. The one in the front is a little bit shorter, so we want to make sure that we retain those in the correct positions. Now that we have this out, you're going to take your door rail with the brackets aligning, make sure that the foam is to the front. And put that in place. There is a spacer that needs to slide underneath the rear mount. That's going to be captured. We're going to reuse those same fasteners that we had before. Putting this back down. And once we have this in, we can snug it up using the T50 once again. Snug it up using the T50. And then we're going to repeat the process on the other side. Real quick, if you have a soft top only vehicle, the bracket that we had seen before will not be included on the vehicle. So I just want to walk you through that real quick. We are still reusing the same fastener in the front. There will be 2 spacers and a bolt that is included in the kit that we're going to use in the same location as before. So let's go ahead and do that install real quick. Once again, we're removing the front bolt, taking our door rail. You can get the front bolt started to help hold it in place. And then we're taking 2 of these spacers. They will stack underneath the door rail. And then you'll be using the bolt from the kit to install in the back. Now that we have this all together, we can tighten it up before moving on to the main pivot bracket and the rear door rails. Now that we have the front door rail in place, you're going to be installing the main pivot bracket. To do that, we're going to be removing these 2 factory pieces of hardware. They will come out. We are going to reuse them. We'll be using some spacers underneath the bracket, and then we'll be tightening it all back down. So this is the main pivot bracket that we're going to be installing. One thing to keep in mind from an orientation standpoint, you want the bumper facing up, and also it will be to the rear of the vehicle. So once we install this underneath these 2 fasteners, it will be in this orientation. So let's go ahead and do it. I know we got the fasteners out. Get the bracket put into place. We are using the spacers, the 5.5 from the kit. Let's go over those 2 locations. Drop this back down. We're using those same fasteners. We'll tighten everything back up. And then we'll repeat the process on the other side. Okay, once again, this is for soft top only. If you do have a soft top only vehicle from the factory, the bracket that we saw earlier here will not be included. So we are going to have to, once again, do a double stack of the spacers and then use the bolts that are in the kit. The main pivot bracket will be in the same orientation as it was before. So once again, we're going to stack these spacers in. Put the bracket in place. And tighten up those fasteners. And now we're going to repeat this process on the other side. For this step, we're going to move back to the table and we're going to prep the soft top for install. So to do that, first step is we're going to lay out the top, locate the one bow, and we're actually going to be flipping this over, exposing these inserts. And that's going to allow us to install our front side rails using the M6x15 bolts from the kit. So to do that, we're just going to line up these two holes with the two inserts. Put that in. Start with it finger tight on both just to get them both started. And then you can come back with your T30 and tighten those down. Once this is done, we're going to repeat on the other side. So now that we have the front side rails installed, the last step is we're going to come in and put our header foams or our one bow foams in place. To do that, it is a sticky back PSA. We're going to peel that off and we're going to align it with the edge here, which will be the long edge, and then you have the short front and side, which corresponds to this corner. So once again, to do that, we're just going to push that up against the side, align that front corner, work our way back, sticking that down as we go. And then we'll repeat on the other side. All right, so now that we have the side bows and the one bow foams in place, the next step is going to be to build out the rest of the bow structure the rest of the way back. To do that and make life a little bit easier for us, we're going to take the top deck and we're going to roll it. So we're going to start at the rear halo. We're going to roll it up to the front. That's just going to keep it managed and kind of out of the way for us while we're going ahead and putting the rest of those bows in place before we move over to the vehicle. So now that we have ourselves prepped, we're going to start working our way down the bow assembly structure. So starting at the front, we're going to start with the 1.5 bow. We're going to be bringing this in and we're going to be using our pivot knuckle screws to install this. One thing to keep in mind as we put this in place is there's a tab. We want to make sure the tab is facing down, so down into the vehicle. To do this install, we're going to put this onto the tabs on the other side. Take our pivot knuckle screw, put it through. Once again, we can go finger tight on both sides just to get it started. And then you're going to take a T30 Torx driver and we're going to snug that up. It is shouldered, so you don't have to overdo it, but it will find its home. Once again, we'll repeat that on the other side and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so with our 1.5 bow installed, we're going to move on to the 2 bow. First, take the 1.5 and flip it forward just to keep it out of the way. Makes life a little bit easier. And then we're going to take the 2 bow and install it in the next set of tabs back. Once again, one thing to keep in mind, the tabs on the 2 bow need to be facing up and the crown on the bow itself is going to face down. So that's just going to make sure that you have that in the right orientation when you put that in. So go ahead and lay that in. We're going to put the pivot knuckles in place. Align them, and using another set of the pivot knuckle screws from our kit, we can go ahead and put this in, tighten it up, make sure that the shoulder has found its home, and then once again using the T30, we're going to go ahead and tighten that up. With this side done, we're going to go ahead and move over and do the same on the opposite side. Okay, so the next step, now that we have the 1.5 and the 2 bow installed, is to install our 1.5 bow control links. To do that, you're going to need the 1.5 bow control link. We'll need the pivot knuckle screws once again, and we're going to start with our 1.5 bow forward to expose the tab. Makes life a little bit easier. Making sure that the knuckle is facing inward. By that I mean we're going to be putting the bolt in from the inside of the vehicle. Just push that down into place. Start that screw using our T30 still. We're going to tighten that up. And now that that's snug and in place, we're going to be able to use our left hand to hold this while we bring the 2 bow up into position. So we're going to bring the 1.5 back, get that knuckle lined up. And using another one of the pivot knuckle screws, we're going to attach that to the bracket that's on the 2 bow. So that's in place using the T30 once again. We'll tighten this one up. Now that we have both pivots in, before we move to the other side and do the same, one thing to note, there is an isolator on the 1.5 control link. We want to make sure that that's facing up and that's positioned on the 1.5 bow as that comes down and makes contact. With that said, now that we have this side done, we'll go ahead and move over to the other side. So now that we have the 1.5 bow and the 2 bow assemblies installed, ready to go, we're going to keep the top deck rolled up. We're going to go ahead and flip this over so that it's at the front, exposing the rear pivots. And then at this point, we're ready to move this over to the vehicle. So we're going to take this, grab a buddy, and then we're going to go install it on the vehicle itself. Now that we have the vehicle completely prepped and the soft top itself completely prepped, we're going to go ahead and get ready to marry the 2 of them together. So kind of a quick tip, you're going to take the fabric bag that came in your kit, we're going to lay it out on the hood because we will be laying the soft goods on the hood while we get everything installed. While we're doing that, we're also going to fold the mirrors in and pull the antenna. This just helps make it a little bit easier for the next step when you and a buddy go to install this top onto the vehicle itself. So now that we've got the top on the vehicle itself, sitting here loosely, the next step is going to be installing the pivots. So we're going to slip the pivot onto the main pivot bracket, and using our pivot knuckle screws, we're going to put this through and tighten it down using our T30. Now that this side's complete, we're going to go around and do it on the other side as well. So now we're going to move on and we're going to install our rear door rails. To do that, we're going to place them on the vehicle and we're going to align them to the fasteners that are in the body, and they're going to be aligning with the holes here. Place this up here, make sure that it overlaps. We use the M8s from the kit. And now we'll repeat on the other side. Next, we're going to be installing our 2-bow control links. These are going to get put in place from the pivot point here back up to the 2-bow. Things to keep in mind: there is a bend. You want the bend towards the front, and we're going to make sure that these bolts install from the inside of the vehicle outward. So to help check, that's going to sit in place. You're going to be touching off on the bumpers, and we're just going to slide this pivot over, and using our pivot knuckle screws, we're going to get that started and then use our T30 to tighten it up. We'll do this one first, and then we'll come back and do the front on the actual 2-bow itself. The rear on, we're going to lift, bring this down into alignment. I'm going to attach the 2-bow. And then we're going to repeat this process on the other side. Now we have everything built, so we're ready to put the soft goods and fold it back onto the frame itself. So to do that, you need to grab your buddy. We're going to take this at the rear halo, and we're going to carry it back to get it into a resting position close to the rear of the vehicle. To relieve the tension on the top and allow us to do the install in the back, we're now going to take the header and we're going to put it back into the Sunrider position. This may be, with everything still loose, a lot easier if you still have the help of your buddy. Now that we're at the back of the vehicle, we're going to attach the rear halo to the rear knuckles. To do that, we want to roll this down, and there's 2 tabs. We want to set those in place in those knuckles. And then using our pivot knuckle screws, we're going to go ahead and get that started. And then tighten up with our T30. And then we're going to repeat on the other side. The next step with positioning our rear halo is we're going to have to pull the 2 T30 bolts for the bottom of the sound pods. Once those are out, we'll be able to rotate the bow down into place and then capture it on the bracket here. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, with the bolts removed, we're going to gently pull out on the speaker pod, slide the bracket in between, and then we're going to go ahead and reinstall our bolt. You're going to want to get both sides started before tightening everything down. Now that we have everything in place, we're going to go ahead and tighten these bolts down, starting on the one side, and then we'll be doing the same on the other. To prep for installing the upper quarter window retainer, which is the next step, we need to make sure that we have our cable visible and ready to attach. We're going to be looking for it here in this hole. If it is not visible like it is here, then there's just a little bit of slack, which you can actually see up top. So to help with that, there is a slit here in the fabric. So we're going to go ahead and pull the rest of that slack through until you can no longer see it up top. And then push that to the rear. That's going to allow us to get a good grip on that cable. Now that we have it out on this side, we're going to repeat on the other side. Now that we have the cable out and accessible, we're going to install the upper quarter window retainer. And the first step of that is to install the barrel screw for the cable. So there's going to be a hole. We're going to insert that from the back side, holding that in place so that it is available on the outside. We're going to come up, holding the barrel nut in place on the upper retainer. We're going to pull as much slack as we can on the cable, putting that over, holding it in place. And then we're going to use the screw for the barrel, putting that on. I'm going to start snugging that down. Now that that's in place, we're going to come back with a flathead screwdriver and tighten that up, and then we'll repeat on the other side. If the barrel is a little bit difficult to get through the back, one thing you can do is feed it from the front, and that's going to help clear out that hole. Then we'll be able to take it, put it in from the back side, hold it into position. All right, so the next step in installing our upper quarter window retainers is we're going to hold this up into place, and we're going to be shooting 4 of the M6 screws from the bottom, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. We suggest doing 1 and 1 just to hold this in place, and then you can come back, get the rest in, and then tighten everything up. And now we'll repeat on the other side. All right, and with that, we can now go ahead and close the soft top and latch it down. Okay, to latch the Trektop, we're going to go ahead and use the handle provided. We're going to pull down, operate the one latch, and we're going to reach over to the other side, and then latch on the other. The first latch might be a little tight. That's just it's gonna take place until the fabric relaxes. The next step, now that we have the top deck in place and tightened down, is we're gonna install the rear windows. To do that, we're gonna flip up the rear corner and then slide the rear window in. Taking our rear window, making sure that the P-welt is on the inside. Up at the top, we're gonna start with the bullet, and that's what's gonna help feed us into our track. Once that bullet was in, we fed it all the way across. We want to center it up. Then we're going to take our tailgate bar, making sure that the seal is facing toward the bottom and out. Coming back to that P-welt, feed this into the channel. Centering it. And we're going to leave it here until we have the quarter windows in place. So one thing to keep in mind when we get the rear windows in is we're going to have to look at the bottom corner of this hard plastic retainer. There's a J-hook that we need to make sure is attached. So just pull the soft goods back. That gets attached into the corner. And then you also have this long sewn in plastic retainer as well. It needs to flip to the other side of the corner. This is going to aid in the install later on. Okay, next we're going to install our quarter windows. To do that, we're going to locate the P-welt along the top. It's going to slide into this track. And then we're going to use the J-hook extrusions on the front and on the bottom. Okay, now that we got the top slid in, we're going to come to the front and using our J extrusion, we're going to feed this into the retainer. Then we're going to come around to the back, pulling tight. We're now going to install the corner. To do that, we want to make sure that we line up the top and bottom bosses with the cutouts. And then once that's pulled tight, we'll use the strap to secure it. To finish off the install on the quarter windows, we're going to flip out this bottom retainer and lock it into our belt rail. And now we'll repeat the process on the other side. Final step to install the tailgate bar, we're going to be putting this into this slot. So go ahead and make sure that that's lined up on both sides. And then we're going to push it in. All right, so the next step is going to be coming inside the vehicle and fixing the hook and loop around the crossbows. There's 3 of them, so we'll start here at the front, work our way back. And now repeat on the last 2 bows. So to close the rear window, we're going to put it in the down position here. We're going to use the J rail on the sides, and this is going to interface with the retainer on the rear quarter windows. So we're going to put that in, and we're going to repeat on the other side. That, close the tailgate. Okay, the last step here on the outside of the vehicle is we're going to pull our top deck back down and attach the hook and loop along the edge here to the top of the quarter window. We're going to do this on both sides. Okay, with that, the install is done on our new Latch the Trektop for Bronco. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us either on besttop.com or through our customer service 1-800 number. We'll see you out on the trail.